Hello and welcome to There's No Business Like, a podcast where friends and industry colleagues explore topics and interview leaders in our industry of professional theatrical touring.
Welcome back to There's No Business Like. This week, I am here with all of my friends, like literally the only ones that I have. We'll start with Katie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Josh's number one friend, Katie Miller with Michigan Maven Creative Associates in Midland, Michigan.
That's a lie. Kevin.
Kevin Maynard coming at you from Tallahassee with opening nights at Florida State University.
I don't like him that much either. Bryan.
Brian Zelmer from Bardavon Presents.
Whatever, loser. Danielle.
Hey, it's Danielle Van Hook, the Closet Octopus, that works at the Alden in McLean, Virginia.
The Closet Octopus.
And I'm Josh from Marion, Illinois.
Nailed it. I didn't know Josh was here twice.
All of a sudden, I heard an echo that I wasn't speaking in my ears.
It's a good ventriloquist.
Too bad my camera's not working. You can't see me do the Kevin movements.
So we're here today, and we are talking about some recent headlines. I'm going to jump in and start with Temple Live. So at the beginning of September, Temple Live, if you don't know what Temple Live is, they kind of went around and bought old Masonic temples and turned them into live entertainment venues. A lot of them were already set up in a way that worked for that because of the ceremonial spaces in a lot of Masonic temples. That was their entire business model, was that they took those, revitalized them, and then put major national headline acts into those venues. And all of a sudden they closed. I think they had 7 venues at the time, and all of a sudden they closed all the venues and all operations without any advance notice, all on the same day, I believe on September 6th. I learned about this from a promoter that was doing a show in our venue in September, and he told me, he's like, yeah, they still owed me about $50,000 in ticket revenue, and it doesn't seem like that's going to be coming towards me, and so he's going to be part of a lawsuit. They weren't paying out promoters there at the end. They weren't paying artists. They still owed artists a lot of money. They canceled. Jeezy was programmed to perform on the 6th when they canceled it, and they canceled his show day of. And I'm not sure where ticket sales and ticket refunds landed on that, if they landed anywhere. This was a group that was building quickly, ramping up fast as an entity, and then they had a little bit of turmoil with over the last 4 months or so. 4 to 6 months, they had fired their overall programming person, and then 3 months ago brought them back again. There were probably some red flags here.
Yeah, it was also just really odd in the sense that if you didn't have a Temple Live in your community or anything about it, it was real quiet, and not a lot of even I hate to say mainstream, but the main papers in a lot of those communities weren't covering it. It was mostly the pop-up entertainment zines and online things that picked those up. It closed really, really quietly, and the only people who really knew were promoters and obviously the artists who all of a sudden weren't getting a check for either that show that day or future shows. And if you go to Temple Live now, it's just for inquiries, contact this. There's nothing else. It's just folded real quietly.
And I agree. I never would have heard about it if it wasn't for firsthand word of mouth from a promoter that they owed a lot of money to.
Yeah, I think you messaged it to the group, and then I reached out to a friend because there's a Temple Live venue in Peoria, Illinois. And I was like, hey, is this? And they're like, just overnight. And they're like, and they really didn't know until they looked at their local entertainment. So it's I don't know. But yeah, it wasn't even in their local paper.
And for the first month, just local coverage of each individual location was all I could find. There was no
overarching. Yeah.
There's still no MSN.com is where I've found one article about it, and then hypebot.com, which is not a major publication in any way, was the other leading source that covered it all.
So.
I will say, though, the Beatty Capital Group website is still active. So I was curious, and I just found it. So the Beatty Capital website is still active, and Lance Beatty is still listed as the founder and CEO. And Rob Thomas is listed as president at Temple Live. So there is still some...
The Rob Thomas?
Not that Rob
Yeah, I
Thomas.
was thinking the same thing.
I think fortunately not that Rob Thomas. He previously served as a talent buyer at Live Nation and booked the long-running music venue Bogarts in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then some other spaces. So there is still a way to potentially get in touch with these folks through the Beatty Capital.
Rob Thomas is who was let go and then brought back.
Rehired. Yeah. So this is like a real estate investment group, like a private equity capital group. And so it's interesting that that's the route that they went, in the live entertainment space. I'm just wondering, like, what brought this on? Was it lack of ticket sales? Was it some bad investments and business decisions they made on their end? And what is going to happen after this? What is the recourse?
I'm also intrigued to see like what kind of liability shields they've got in place to like shield themselves from the money that they owe out there and any potential pending class action lawsuits that come from ticket buyers or from promoters or anybody that is going to be pursuing action on this, to see if Beatty Capital was able to actually shield themselves from the liability of that venture.
My guess is probably yes, because they probably have some very high-powered, high-dollar attorneys that set up those contracts and set up the venues and all the legalities around it. So I don't know. I think there is a world where they could walk away scot-free, and a lot of people on the other side of that could lose a lot of money. So my question is like, what does this mean for the industry? How do we then think differently about entering into contracts, promoters entering into contracts with venues like this? How do artists go about making sure that they're taken care of when working with organizations like this? Like, we talk a lot about innovation and new models and bringing new players into the space to help with that. But this seems to been an example of that obviously didn't work out in the end.
I do think it's much like any other industry where businesses close. I feel bad for the artists out there who are not getting paid, the promoters, all those sort of things. But I will also say that I'm not entirely heartbroken over it, because I do think that, big conglomerates like this that are coming in and scooping up a lot of venues are making it a lot harder for many other organizations and venues to be able to book acts. We're seeing some of those things happen with, the larger organizations getting into venue management and then obviously building their own ticketing systems. So I hate to see it happen. At the same time, I like having a localized approach to arts and entertainment.
And Kevin, to that end, I think that on the other side of it is the community focus too could be hurting, because now when you have a bigger group that doesn't even live there running things and just working through a remote skeleton staff or crew or what have you, you're going to lose that connection and therefore not have a mission or a purpose to reach out to the people you're not who don't have accessibility perhaps, or who don't have the means to serve them as well. You're just focusing purely on the transactions and selling tickets and to the highest of people that could afford, to the highest tiers of income. And I think that can hurt communities as well.
Well, that's a great transition, Bryan. Let's talk about Live Nation, the biggest overall concert producing conglomerate of all. Their CEO, Michael Rapino, recently on a conference stage claimed that concert tickets should cost way more than they actually do, and that concert tickets have been underpriced for a very long time.
And there's a lot of runway for it to increase.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I didn't get to read the article, but at the end, does it talk about how he's going to be setting up a scholarship fund for people who can't afford those?
Well, here's a specific example. He says he looks at people being proud to buy courtside tickets for the Lakers at $70,000 a seat, and he views that as his window to being able to price much higher, and then being really upset that people are bothered by an $800 ticket to Beyonce.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack here. One, apples and oranges. Sports and concerts, very different things for a lot of reasons. But however, I would also argue that maybe the CEO of Live Nation and I are running in different circles, because I'm going to tell you that anytime I hear somebody talk about sports tickets, nobody's bragging about how much they're paying for tickets. Typically, I hear, yeah, I had to spend $1,200 a seat on this because I wanted to see my favorite sports team. And then I also paid $40 for beer and food and all these other things on top of it. I'm not getting the bragging aspect.
And I will say that this article on Vice.com about this does list his net worth, which is $997.1 million.
Oh shit! I'm just at 800 million. So that's a mismakes sense.
Different echelon. Sorry.
If you had that much,
Well, and the other-
we would be better friends.
The other thing, just even on the sports, part of it, not trying to compare apples and oranges, but I don't have a problem with having those courtside seats being $1 bazillion, but you also should have scaling and different price points as you go up.
Well, and they do.
But no, to the point where it becomes affordable for the masses. Sports used to be the place that the blue collar people could still, the working class, even below blue collar, could afford to bring their family to go see a baseball game. Yeah, they're in the cheap seats, but it was still a great bonding experience. They can't afford that anymore, or they might do it once a year because they save up all year long to do it, where they used to go all the time. And I think it's also hurting fanship. You look at the NFL numbers are going down. Their costs and the Super Bowl pricing and for advertising and all that's going up. That just continues to go up every year. And that's what a lot of people point at. Well, people are willing to pay for it. But you look at the overall fan base is going down. That's been the last 3 years, the trend. There's a lot of things that are showing that they're probably hurting themselves in the long run. It might be working in the short run to make a lot of money all up front, but I think the long-term plan is not a successful, lasting model, because you need to have the masses be, following you and, spending on the merch at their local stores and all of this stuff to be really into it. But the more and more you turn them off, the more you're going to be hurting your business in the long run.
So one interesting point of this article is talking about the artist's production costs.
Mm-hmm.
And one point that is made in this article is that 10 years ago, Beyonce would be traveling with 10 trucks. Now she's traveling with 64 trucks.
Which 10 trucks is a lot.
10 trucks is a huge show.
Yes, that's huge.
64 would take up my whole city.
And so looking at that, like they're saying, there was a specific example of, $100 million grosses, but then 30% of that is what's going to the artist, because 70% of that is going into the actual production costs.
Yeah, $30 million. I'm feeling for him.
$30 million is still a great revenue.
You don't often hear a billionaire victim blame another billionaire.
Hold on. Have you been paying attention to the current political climate at all?
It certainly happens. But normally they could do it privately.
I mean, purely between the president and the governor of Illinois,
I've got some.
It's almost daily at this point.
I mean, look though, he's not a billionaire. He's only in the 900 millions, so he's hurting. Okay,
but I think where the rubber sort of hits the road here is like there is a difference between a Taylor Swift concert and a Beyonce concert, and the tickets that we are trying to sell in our venues in smaller communities, right? For smaller artists that are just as wonderful of artists, and the quality is what you're getting is an amazing experience. But like there are so many people that cannot afford that $800 ticket who still want to engage in the arts in some way, shape, or form, right? That might be a once in a lifetime purchase for them. But if we want them to not just spend money once a year, but we want them to spend money 5 times a year and come to our venues and engage, like we can't be setting that expectation for people that all tickets cost this much or all tickets are out of reach. And I think when we are constantly having that conversation about like concert tickets are too much or they're not enough, it gives an unrealistic expectation to the regular person that, oh, I can't afford to go even to the venue down the street because the tickets are out of reach for me. I think it's
a big problem, and a big part of that, something that we've discussed recently, is the third-party ticketing, which anytime somebody Googles and looks for a ticket and they see something that is 3 times the price of the actual ticket that you're selling, then their assumption is that you are outpriced.
Yeah.
And that you are overpriced. But the reality of that is because of that contact point, it makes it harder for you to sell tickets at the regular rate because people see the higher rate whenever they click onto a Google link.
Yeah. I also think that like there is some truth in what he's saying. Like, this is not a black and white issue. Like, there are a lot of concerts and a lot of shows that I think are underpriced. I mean, we see artists that are stringing things along in a shoestring budget because they can't get that sort of support. They can't get that. So, I mean, there is some aspect there. There's also the bigger issue of like, is the accessibility thing. Like, this is like our industry is becoming or can absolutely become an elitist
Yes.
Industry where it becomes it's something only for, you know, people at a certain income level. And we already struggle with that.
Because people think of it that way. It hasn't historically, we know it has not actually been that way. And there have been access points along the whole way. But we came to an inflection point where it became or was perceived as an elitist institution, right? Performing arts across the board because of ballet and opera and sort of the inaccessibility of the content. And we have been fighting that battle for a long time. So when you're saying, yeah, it's okay for someone to pay $800 for a concert ticket, that just reinforces that stereotype and undoes all of the work that we've been doing, I would say the last 40 years, to really help people understand that this is for you.
Yeah.
This is not
And
for
I think
the
the
elites.
I think the distinction to make here is Ticketmaster is a for-profit business, and their purpose is to make money, to maximize income. I'm, on the other hand, running a nonprofit organization, and while I have to follow business principles and I don't want to lose money and I want to make sure I can get surpluses to cover the things that make a loss, my purpose isn't to maximize profits. My purpose is to serve the community. So we have different goals too, and so I can't blame them for that, having that viewpoint, because it is a business viewpoint to try to maximize profits. But that goes back to what I was saying before, is it's not a long-term business strategy. It's a short-term business strategy.
Well, and additionally, if looking to maximize profits, if they are looking at what the secondary market, the third-party sellers are being able to sell the tickets for, then that is a sign to them that they need to be charging more money for their tickets up front.
Yeah. I also think that this is a bigger conversation on a lot of things. And I do think that there's opportunities on the artist end to sort of rein in some of that production. I think that you can do a really impressive show, that you can create a really incredible experience and rein in some of those costs to give back to your fans or allow your fans an opportunity to be able to afford that. And we are seeing some artists that are doing that.
I mean, I haven't seen the books for any of this, but my assumption is a lot of that production cost, probably not as much as it should be, is going to people's jobs, right? It's event security. It's the people that set the stuff up. I mean, it's the stagehands that are probably union. And there's some ways where it's one half dozen or the other, right? Things probably don't need to take 64 tour buses or buses is maybe a little bit too much, but then there's jobs missing out of that. And just the comparisons of these things that are like the pinnacle of entertainment, like we shouldn't be comparing anything to a tour like Taylor Swift or Beyonce that literally changed towns' economics for like the week that they were there, right? Those are like once in a, well, I mean, they're coming up more often, but like once in at least a decade, right? Like situations that like the vast majority of things that are touring aren't coming near. You know, there has also been articles about how like tours aren't selling. And so if we're just going to be comparing the most extreme situation, like there's no meat here. Like none of
it's
this.
Just sad that
That's a great point.
It's just sad that MTV closed down, because it would have been great if they could have revived the Unplugged series and stripped everybody down to the bare basics of the music, because that would make everything less costly.
So, Bryan, you've got an article that you're bringing to us as well, don't you?
So mine's a little bit lighter than what you guys brought. It's an article from the Times-Union out of Albany, New York, talking about the changing art scene of a new wave of arts leaders and they're like my organization. In fact, I'm mentioned in the article where I'm taking over a legacy leadership that ran this organization for 30 years. And the interesting thing is I'm one of 2 people out of the 16 organizations that are male. The rest are all women taking over in the state major organizations, arts.
So are you saying that you're featured in an article about women taking over leadership roles?
Ironically, I am, and even more ironically, the other male is also named Bryan. So
yeah, Bryans are taking women's jobs. That's all I learned from the article.
But it was really interesting, and not only are they women, but the article also explained that they tend to be younger than what the predecessors were. They're a lot of people of color, people that are differently abled folks, which obviously we've talked about. I would fall into that category as well. So it's just very interesting. And I think the crux of the whole article is just talking about what this means in terms of the way the operations may change. They alluded to some things, but obviously this all just happened within less than a year ago. So they were just saying that from what the leaders are talking about is that they seem to be not seeing each other as competitors, but looking at a more collaborative approach, being more open to like letting their teams lead and all sorts of things. So it just seemed to be a recurring theme with all of these new leaders, embracing more partnerships and so on.
Well, first of all, I will say, huzzah, more women in leadership. Love to see it. And I'm wishing
a lot more women in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm wishing the best to all of these individuals who are taking on these leadership roles. But I think one of the reasons we want to talk about it briefly today was the sea change, like to have that much turnover in one particular region in such a short period of time, I think is indicative of what's going on across the nation and something that we need to be paying attention to when it comes to planning for the future. There's, like Bryan mentioned, a lot of legacy leaders, a lot of folks that had been in their organizations for a long time were stepping down, retiring, moving on, and they're filling those roles. So what does that mean for us as an industry, integrating those people into their spaces, integrating them into our larger industry, supporting them in their new roles, and what are we going to do to help with that transition, not only in upstate New York where Bryan is, but in other communities across the country that are seeing that same trend?
I mean, yeah, Katie, it would be cool if somebody did those things. I have a feeling that's going to be more of a bootstrap situation, as someone who falls in the category of woman. I mean, hopefully it's indicative of things to come, right? Like they're just starting out. And so it's, it's great to hear it, but like, I also hope that like we go back and do this article again next year and like get a little bit more substance and, can talk about maybe how women's leadership looks differently.
And I will say that one of the women mentioned in this is Diane Ebersol, who took over the Egg in Albany. A very cool space. We're actually going to have her on the podcast in a future episode in the not too distant future. So we will hear from one of these women too and see what she's done in this time.
I think one of the great things to look at here is that with all of this changeover and so much of it being female leadership, is that there is a built-in support network around themselves with just what's coming in right now to help move that forward. So there isn't nearly as much of an establishment that they're moving into because of all the turnover at the same time. And with that, we're going to wrap on this Headlines episode today. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon here on There's No Business Like.
Stay in touch. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to There's No Business Like. Our producers and hosts are Bryan Zelmer, Josh Benson, Kevin Maynard, Katie Miller, and me, Danielle Van Hook. Views expressed in this podcast are ours alone and are not reflective of the organizations we are a part of. Keep up with us at nobusinesslike.com. There you'll find links to all of our episodes and socials. If you like this podcast, give us a like, a follow, a review, or our favorite, a 5-star rating. Oh, wait, what was that site? I got it, don't worry. It is nobusinesslike.com. Do I sound out bus-I-ness every time I type it? Yep, sure do. Stay in touch, my friends.
I might all of a sudden drop off because my I'll explain later, but I have very little battery left, and the power is not working up here. Apparently, I had it plugged in.
It's
But
wild that they
there's
don't
no
have
power.
Wi-Fi in upstate New York.
There's no Wi-Fi. Well, I'll explain where I am. I don't want to
Or
take time now and
electricity.
waste it. Yeah.
I mean, I knew Bryan was old, but I didn't realize that, like,
We have Modest Mouse here and and a big opener, and they're taking up every nook and cranny of our building. So I'm up in an undeveloped part on the second floor that we can't use because it's full of asbestos and lead
Ghosts.
paint and lead pipes, and so it's just
Get
a
out of
space
there.
that we
What
just
the
use
fuck
for
are you
storage.
doing in there?
What?
I'm
That's why
recording
your
an
camera won't
episode
work.
because I'm too far from
Oh,
the
no.
Wi-Fi, and apparently the outlets in this place aren't on, so that's why I don't
yeah,
have
it's
power.
because
I might
there's
get
a fire
dropped.
hazard.
There's also ghosts.
Like, we need remediation that's going to cost us millions of dollars to rehab these rooms, so that's why they're empty. But it's the only quiet space I can go to today to record, so let's get going before I drop out.
Yeah, what's the worst that asbestos and lead can do?
Well, I'm not like picking at it or licking the walls. So.
I don't
don't
know. I
know
can't
that.
see you.
Yeah. Maybe
am
that's
I?
your favorite snack. Who knows?
That would be such an insane thing to learn about someone 3 years into knowing them.